This is our project at the moment. This is the Unified Transport Network, and we are Chris,
Callum,
and Joe.
So this is our phase map of the Unified Transport Network, and this shows the impact of each different phase within the project, and we'll lay out how this presentation will go, and we'll refer back to each impact after we've concluded each phase.
Phase 0, site analysis.
Hidden nature.
During our site visit, we were able to experience other parts of Runcorn that wouldn't necessarily be easily accessible with the current infrastructure that is already in place.
As shown in the following film, these areas of Runcorn were disconnected due to their obscurity behind housing and their lack of connection to the infrastructure.
This map identifies the green spaces within the local region. As you can see, as the roads begin to develop and display, it highlights how disconnected and fragmented they are throughout Runcorn. Which leads us on to fragmented infrastructure.
The four main strands of Runcorn's transport infrastructure are pedestrian, roadways, railways, and canals. So we started to look into how each one of these transport infrastructures affects the city of Runcorn. And so initially we looked at commuter times from cars, pedestrians, and bicycles, and this highlighted how car-centric the city is.
And actually, these routes aren't all that different. The pedestrians and cyclists have to go the same way as a car, and it creates quite a boring walk.
So the canal network, as it is, has a very low speed of 4 miles per hour, which means it takes a long time to get anywhere outside of Runcorn. However, the nearby Manchester Shipping Canal has access to a higher speed limit, which would reduce the times it would take to transport goods or people through this network.
Here we've identified the key cities nearby to Runcorn and their current distance, their interface distance to arrive. And with H2 coming in, this will greatly speed up. So this is something we want to take in consideration, as the central site which we've picked will be the first point of entry into Runcorn from people visiting.
So currently this is the configuration of all the transport networks where they overlap but they don't interact in any meaningful way, and this isn't something that we want. So this film kind of highlights that and shows how all these networks coalesce at Shopping City, but they don't interact with one another. They purely exist on their own planes.
From looking at these different cities, we realised that you would need a connection between each of these different modes of transport
to effectively traverse through a city.
So this diagram represents the different points where key forms of infrastructure were developed throughout Runcorn. Now, while these have been appropriately designed for their era, over time, what has been a missed opportunity and what our expedient infrastructure is reviewing is the opportunity to combine all aspects of these current infrastructures that are already in place.
So how can we achieve this unification? So by implementing an autonomous system which allows the individual nodes to work in unison, this will allow for a free-flowing transport organism to spread across Runcorn.
The variation of industry within Runcorn is a perfect hotbed for the implementation of an autonomous system.
As a consequence of implementing an autonomous system, this will start to change how the landscape of Runcorn works.
These are the different forms of electric and autonomous transports we plan to implement.
So one of the precedents we've been looking at is Sidewalk Labs in Toronto, and this is a multi-layered city that Google are trying to design, which brings together city building with digital technologies. And one of these key technologies is autonomous systems. And this has allowed them to free up more public realm because you don't need parking or different interfaces like that. And we'd like to see how this would affect Runcorn in the long term.
Identifying the site and analysis.
This is the area of site that we've chosen because of the intersection between all these planes of infrastructure.
This diagram displays the current approximation and location of site that we are currently reviewing.
As you can see, the site has a high soil density. The site is also based on pebbly sandstone, which is good for drainage. And there is also no risk of flooding on the site.
This is a 3D printed model that we've given a go. It's more of a conceptual model just to describe the various nodes that were analysed with the maps that we produced before, and about how we could conceptualize and how these different aspects of infrastructure cross over and how they are weaved into the fabric of Runcorn, and by creating the central knotted area where our site will be, how we can connect them in a more efficient way.
This is our current timeline for each of the different phases and how they affect each of the transport nodes within our network.
Phase 1, unlock Runcorn.
We aim to connect the Runcorn Ring back to the main canal leading to Manchester. By doing this, ships will no longer be restricted to the speed limits currently in place on the canal.
This will also help in bringing materials to site when constructing the Unified Transport Hub.
Phase 1, unlock Runcorn, allows transport of materials to site, quicker connections to Manchester and Birmingham, and create new green spaces adjacent to the canal.
Phase 2, Halton Gigafactory.
As previously discussed, these variations of industry within Runcorn, engineering, distribution, logistics and technology are all the constituent factors you'd need to be able to implement autonomous vehicles. So hopefully not only will this bring in new people, but also provide variety of work within Runcorn.
Hopefully with this implemented, the population of Runcorn would increase closer to the originally required 100,000 residents for Runcorn to operate successfully.
This is a diagram to show the different investments that each of the main parties want to do into autonomous and electric vehicles. Within Halton itself, it's a high labour constituency, and so the predominant idea would be that these labour ideas could support what we want to bring into Runcorn in terms of the Gigafactory.
Although England has a challenging history within the automotive industry, production and fabrication within the industry is slowly beginning to rise more and more, especially within the autonomous sector.
Within the site we have chosen for the new autonomous Gigafactory sits the Manchester Shipping Canal offices and dock buildings. However, these are in disrepair and so need to be replaced, and as such, the new additions to this area will be the Halton Autonomous Gigafactory and the new Manchester Shipping Canal offices and dock buildings.
We've calculated that 3 wind turbines would be required to power all of our proposals. This is subject to change.
Phase 2, Halton Gigafactory. Creating an autonomous network, creating jobs in autonomous chemical industries, increase the population to a sustainable level, create new green spaces within the Runcorn docks, autonomous vehicles free up the space to introduce other nature spaces.
Phase 3, Unified Transport Network Hub.
This area includes the different transport links, and we want to bring these together in one singular node.
Our initial ideas on how the unified transport network could work.
Our main design philosophy that we aim to introduce to our project will be the expansive effects, fluid movement and centralised hub.
Consequently, we started to evaluate precedent on this transport hub sector. Initially, we started to look at these different buildings, such as the Salesforce Transit Centre. However, this had vertical circulation, which our site doesn't really offer us, as our transport nodes aren't interacting on one singular plane. Therefore, we started to look at King Akuma's Paris Metro Station, which seemed to fit more with our ideals. As you can see, how we could sort of appropriate this design and sort of understand how this could fit with our ideas. When analysing the building in section, we realised that it was more useful for us if we span it upside down, and this started to bring more ideas in terms of how it could work with the levels that we currently have in Runcorn.
From this, we've generated a conceptual massing. You can see the 3 different transport networks connected by pedestrian walkways.
With this concept model, we have looked at trying to adopt the 3 precedences that we talked about earlier, which is trying to maintain a fluid movement between each method of transport while providing a central hub for expansive effects to grow throughout Runcorn.
So including our initial site analysis of hidden nature, we wanted to integrate nature into the fabric of the building itself. Therefore, we started to play around with how this might turn out with the massing itself.
We are currently reviewing timber as the main materiality for our building. This is in line with using an autonomous car network to reduce the carbon footprint of our building. We are currently reviewing about the possibility of introducing a winter garden in the centre of the UTN. The idea behind this is to produce a memorable experience for people arriving to Runcorn from HS2.
As a consequence, we started to look at different examples of precedent where buildings have gardens or winter gardens integrated into their fabric.
This is an idealized view of the integration of nature within our building.
We have recently finished building a site model with the correct levels, and this will allow us to implement the ideas from our massing correctly into the site.
Phase 3 Unified Transport Network Hub. Travel to from within Runcorn is effective and diversified. Adoption of autonomous vehicles frees up space for opportunities. Creates a service-based jobs for the majority of Runcorn. Runcorn becomes an area for further investment. The first point of contact in Runcorn is nature. Green links move people across Runcorn and to and from the UTN hub. A cultural implementing nature into Runcorn is born.
Phase 4, Unified Runcorn. Currently within Runcorn, there is a large amount of dedicated parking areas. These would no longer be required.
And they could be turned into new opportunities, such as parks and pedestrian access ways.
This is a perspective of a current street in Runcorn. There's a high amount of parking within the street, which reduces the pedestrians' access. However, with autonomous vehicles, roadways would be narrowed as well as one-way systems will be implemented, meaning that the leftover space within the street creates new opportunities for the residents of Runcorn. Here you can see a plan to expand the building's network out through a series of interventions. Different areas within Runcorn will have different interventions, such as residential areas will have more allotment space and fitness areas, whereas areas along the high street will implement areas for parking of electric scooters and bikes, as well as seating areas for meeting.
We're currently surmising a list of the spaces that will be freed up and creating interventions for each of these spaces. The following films look at the freeing up of spaces of balconies, garages, roads, and petrol stations, and we hope to create more vignettes on the rest of these spaces.
No, I don't think so.